Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make a coconut tart. This is very popular in the Virgin Islands. You might find they make coconut tart, they make guava tarts, and they also make pineapple tarts. So let's get to see how this is done. Okay, so for the dough we will need 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Here we have 1 tablespoon of baking powder, 1 tablespoon of almond essence, 1 egg, 4 tablespoons of butter, a 1/4 cup of sugar. I'm using brown sugar. I have a 1/4 cup of evaporated milk and 4 tablespoons of shortening. I will leave list of ingredients in the description box below. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to add the baking powder to the flour. This is the sugar. I'm just going to give that a quick mix. Next, I'm going to add the butter and the shortening and just mix everything together. This time I'm going to use my hands. Just make sure everything is fully incorporated. So next we're going to deal with wet ingredients. I have my egg in my measuring cup. Just give it a quick whisk. Then I'm going to add the almond essence and the milk. Just whisk that again quickly, and then we're going to add this liquid ingredients to the dry ingredients. This should be good. Okay, so here's the flour with the butter and the baking powder and everything. So I'm going to add the wet ingredients now. So here's my dough. Everything is totally combined now. It's not a kneading process like how when I'm making bake. It's like this is like a pastry dough. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna wrap this in a piece of plastic wrap and put this in the fridge for like 2 hours. So in the fridge this goes. Okay, so let's talk about the filling for this coconut tart. I am using a dry coconut, right? So I'm just going to show you what I'm doing. I'm going old school way. So this is the dry coconut, what it looks like. This is the outside, this is the inside that I cracked and opened. All right, this is the inside. What I did was I had to dig out this part of it from the shell, right, and discard the hard part. Some people use this hard part to make like craft items and stuff. So this is the coconut after I digged out the hard part, right? This is what it looks like. And normally we would use this to blend and make like coconut dumplings, and we could extract the liquid to make coconut milk, things like that, right? But for this recipe I want the coconut flakes to look nice and white like this. So to get that, I cut off this part here. Don't worry, I didn't throw it away. I'm going to use that now to make lunch and blend it up and get extra coconut milk from it. So I cut off this brown part, right? And it looks like this. This is I wash it off, and this is what it looks like, right? And then I use a grater. Like I said, I'm going old school way. I grated it on the big side, like what you use to grate like carrots and stuff. And this is the end result, right? So I'm using about 2 cups of this for the filling recipe, part of this recipe. Okay, so on to the total full ingredients for the filling, coconut filling. So I have here 2 cups of the grated shredded coconut, grated coconut, right? And I have half cup of granulated sugar, 1 tablespoon of vanilla essence, and I have the recipe says water, but what I'm using here, I have 2 tablespoons of coconut water, right? When I the same dry coconut. Now, when you crack it open, you get a liquid from it. That's coconut water, right? From the dry coconut. So I use that. I made sure I strained it, make sure there's no kind of like substance in that. I strained it, and I'm using 2 tablespoons of that to go with this recipe. Like I said, the recipe said water, but I'm using all the parts of the coconut. I'm using coconut water, which is super fine, give it extra flavor. So see, here's my saucepan. What I'm going to do, I'm going to just throw in the grated coconut in here. Just basically all these ingredients for the filling, the sugar, the vanilla essence, and the coconut water that I'm using here. I'm going to give this a little mix here. I'm going to put this in my stove and let this boil a bit. So I'll be back and show you what it looks like or how it's done. As you can see here, the sugar is melting, and as it's melting is in liquid form. So we have a lot of water here in this. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to let the coconut cook properly and let that liquid sort of dry down a bit. I have my stove on my smaller burner, and I have it on low heat right now. Let this do its thing. Okay, so here's my piece of dough that I had in the fridge for 2 hours. So I'm going to sprinkle a generous amount on my countertop with some flour. I'm going to proceed to roll out this dough. I'm going to put a bit of flour in my rolling pin too as well. Okay, so here's my dough all fully rolled out. Just some tips. Before I started to roll out, I kneaded the dough a little bit gently with a bit of flour to get a smoother dough, and then I began to roll out. And as I was rolling out, I keep on adding flour to kind of like keep it in place, get it a little firmer, and get a nice smooth dough. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to transfer this to my baking pan, right, with the assistance of my my rolling pin. I'm going to try and roll the piece of dough onto the rolling pin and then transfer it into the dish. So I'll be back. Okay, so here we go again. This is my disposable cake pan, baking pan. It's 8.5 by 1.5, right? So what I did was I greased it with a bit of the shortening, and then I sprinkle a bit of dry flour on it to cover the whole base of the pan, and then I roll the dough onto my rolling pin and then transfer the dough onto here. It's very, very delicate, right? So what I'm going to do here now, I'm just going to like kind of like lay out there a bit, and I'll use a knife. If you have a pizza cutter, you could use that to cut off the excess dough like this. Okay, so I'm gonna roll up this excess dough. We're gonna be using the excess dough, so I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do after that with this. Put that aside. So our base is all set. So next step will be to put the filling into this baking pan. Okay, so here's the the grated coconut that I put on the stove and everything with the sugar. I put it in the tray. Now, initially I said it was 2 cups of the shredded coconut. For this size of pan, I realized I had to use more shredded coconut. So this is basically about 3 cups of coconut, shredded coconut that I cooked up and everything. Of course, you'll have to add a little more sugar. So while you're letting it stir and cook up and everything, you can always taste and make sure it has enough sugar to your liking. So on to the next step. Okay, folks. So now that I'm on to the next step. What I did was, remember we had some leftover dough as we rolled out the first part to get the base. That excess dough, I re-rolled it out and cut it into thin strips like this. Again, I'm using a knife. You could use a pizza cutter and cut it into thin strips like this and just lay it off like that. And then this is my next step, and I'm going to do it. Put strips this way, and then what I'm going to do next, I'm going to put another strip to seal around the edges. So I'll be back when everything is done. Okay, folks, so here's my coconut tarts with all these strips being put in place. Doesn't that look lovely? Like I said before, I cut some more strips, and after I put the diagonal strips, I put a final strip around the edges to kind of make it look finished off. And for the final touch, I'm going to use a fork. I just kind of like seal it, the edges a bit. And any excess piece of dough that is hanging off, of course, you use your knife to cut it off like here. So there's a piece here. I'll just use my knife and cut off that. And I'll just finish. So I'm oven is set at 350 degrees. This should take about 30 minutes to bake. Remember, the coconut is already cooked because we boiled it a bit, and the dough wouldn't take long to cook. So I'll be back when this is fully baked.